When I go to digitize a design, sometimes I'd like to actually have the software set up a specific way before I get started. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to create a style sheet that contains the properties of the different stitch types that I want. Like, for example, if I'm going to work on a knit fabric, I might create a style sheet that will I can go in and set all the settings for beforehand. It just makes it a little bit easier. And by style sheet, what I'm talking about is like the save to sew style sheets. So let me just put in a little run stitch here. Whenever you go to save to sew, you have the ability to choose a fabric type, right? And it's going to adjust the design according to that fabric. And that's something you can do at the end if you want to really learn how to digitize and you want to control that yourself, which I recommend. You'll want to kind of do that along the way. And so whenever you come up here to File and New, you have the ability to select a style. By default, it is set at normal, and you can change this to one of the different save to sew style sheets. Okay, so if you select one of these, whenever you digitize something, it's going to automatically apply the settings to whatever it is that you create. It's a really neat feature that a lot of people don't utilize, but I like to make my own. And one of the things that you can do is make one that is like for 60 weight thread, for instance, because you use different densities and things like that. Also, you can do one for something that you want a little bit more of a bold look to. So I'm going to just show you how you can go about doing this. Okay, it's kind of tricky. You do have to manipulate some things on your computer. So the first thing you have to do is you have to open up one of those style sheets and work from it in order to create your own new one. So if you go to your File Explorer, one of the things that you're going to want to do, I'm in Windows 10, and so you need to be able to be showing hidden items. So a lot of times you're on this home button up here, you would go to View, that tab, and you make sure hidden items is showing. And what that does is allows you to see files that you don't normally see, that this computer kind of hides from you. And if you don't have Windows 10, you'll have to access it a different way, like by going right clicking inside of here and going to Properties, and not inside that specific folder, but you can see you have different attributes. There's ways that you can do that. What I recommend if you don't have Windows 10 is go and do a Google search for how to do that. But if you do have Windows 10, it's right here under the View tab, Hidden Items, and from here we would go to our PC. We would go to our C drive. So the local C drive, and with it showing the hidden items, you'll see this folder right here called Program Data. You can see it's kind of not as strong of a color right here because that's representing the hidden folder, just like this one over here. So if I double click on Program Data, you have to be kind of careful whenever you're working inside of something like this because the computer hides it for a reason. So you have to be very careful with this. But when I go to Program Data, you're going to see Floriani here, and I'm going to double click it. And you can see the different programs that I own. And FTC-U, which is Total Control U, is the one I want to go into. And then I'm going to look for the folder called Style Sheets. When I click that, it's going to bring up basically the templates for all those different fabric types, what the settings are going to be used. And from here, I can open one up and then save it under a different name. So for instance, if I wanted to create my own knit or woven fabric preset, I might start with something like Denim I Digitized, And the way that you're going to want to do this is you're going to want to grab it, you're going to want to select it first, and then drag it on to the software work page. And that will open it up. And this is the style sheet. You can see it says right up here, denim I digitized. So what you can do from here is, it's basically whenever you create a run stitch, it's going to apply these settings to it. So let's say I want to change this and I want this to be a 3mm stitch length. I can do that, and I can come over to commands. I have it set at none and none, and which is good, and because I don't like to have tie-in and tie-offs most of the time. And I'm going to show you some other cool things. So this is a satin stitch, so I might want to be at a 0.4 density. Now if you're working with 60 weight thread, you might want to come in here and make it like a 0.3 and a tighter density. And so you might want to do this and name it as a 60 weight option. That way it would automatically apply that density. And if I come over here into underlay, I can choose different settings. Okay, so I'm going to be doing a woven material, right? So I'm going to utilize a contour underlay along with a perpendicular. But I want to change this density and stuff. I don't want it to be quite so dense. So I'm going to change this to a 3 for the density. And for the stitch length, that's okay. I can keep it at the 2 because this is a satin stitch, and I can hit apply right there. Make sure that I got that applied. I did. And this is something that is really neat too, is you can automatically apply pull and push compensation. And for satin stitches, when I'm working on like a denim, I might choose to do something like a 0.2 as opposed to like a 0.3. But the other thing that I really like that I'm utilizing a lot is for push control. Instead of going by millimeters, I've started to go by lines. And so I'm going to do one line here and hit apply. And let me just explain that really quick. Is if I'm having a 0.4 density and I'm going to apply push compensation by line, what it's going to do is it's going to drop one line from each end. Okay, and what that does is allows it to back it up a little bit to allow for the growth that's going to take place as the stitches are laid. There's a whole video and stuff on compensation and how you need to properly do that inside of the Digitizing Masterclass. So hopefully you're involved with that so you can learn a lot about the push and pull compensation. But I'm utilizing that a lot for satin stitches. I use a one line, and so it'll back it up one line on each side. And then you can do things like, you can work with your commands. I like to work with none. Now I did notice that there's a bug in the software that I guess I'm going to have to report, and you'll see that in a few minutes. But so now the satin stitch is now set up the way that I want it. Okay. Now if I go to a steel stitch, I might want to come in here and do a 0.4. A lot of times I like to work with at least a 3mm, so I'm going to adjust that, and I'm going to hit apply. And for underlay, contour is okay, but I'm going to do not a zigzag but a parallel. And again, I'm going to change this density. I'm going to make it more open. So I'll do a 2 and hit apply. And then I'm going to come over to push and pull compensation, and I'll do 0.3. I'm going to actually bring that down to about 0.2 for working here with this denim. And I'm going to do it by line again, and I'm going to do 1 and hit apply. Come over here, put none and none for the lock stitches, and then I'm going to do the same thing for working with the fill stitch. I'm going to come in here for underlay. I like to use a contour underlay a lot. I don't use it for everything. When I'm working with the smaller fill, I might adjust that. But I will come in and adjust this a little bit too. I'll bring this inset into about 0.5 from a 0.7. And the density I'm definitely going to change. I'm going to put that up to a 3. And it just needs to be more open. Sometimes I'll even go all the way up to a 3.5. So for this case, I'll just do that. And I'll press apply. I'll come into push and pull, and for this one I'm going to do a 0.4 for the denim, and by line when I'm doing fill stitches I do 2 because you add a little bit more for push because there's a lot more buildup that usually takes place. So again, that comes from lessons about compensation. And I'll come in here, do none, none, apply. And then this one is a applique. So a 0.4 is good. The width at 3 is good. I'm not going to really, change anything on this. I'm not going to change anything on the cross stitch because I don't typically use it. And I can come in here and make some changes if I want to the stipple stitch. But I don't utilize it a lot either. But you can adjust it there. So once you have it set, these set it where you want them, what you need to do is now save it, and you're not going to use the same name. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and you can see because I opened it from the style sheets, it's available. But if you don't see it, you go through your C drive, just like we did to get to them, Program Data, Floriani TCU style sheets. Okay, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to type in 00 dash woven fabric. Okay, and what this is basically doing is saying I'm going to work with this woven. I'm naming it woven, so if I want to use it, by putting 00, it's going to throw it up at the top of the list. You can see I've already made one for knit fabric. I'm going to hit save, and now it's saved. But in order for me to access it, I'm going to need to, I think I'm going to have to shut the system down. But let me just check. If I go to File and New, and I scroll up to the top, you can see it's actually already here. So I don't have to do that, which I thought I was going to have to. So that's good. Let me go ahead and do that. Let me go to woven and hit OK, and it's going to open a new page, and now it should apply those settings for me. So if I come in here and create a running stitch, and I'm just going to do a couple different stitches here. Okay, here's a satin stitch. Here's a steel stitch. There's a fill stitch. And those are the things that I was working with and changing. So let's go ahead and take a look at these. So if I go back to the running stitch, you can see the stitch length is 2.5. Let's go back over here. We still have that style sheet open. You can see I changed it to 3. I think that it isn't changing it. It might need to be restarted. Let me look at this one. You can see it did put a 0.4 here, and it was at 0.5, I believe, and I have contour and perpendicular. I have the density at 3, which is what I did do. Let me come down here to the steel stitch. You can see the steel stitch is at 2.5, which I think I changed it to 3. So let me go ahead and look over here, and you can see I did change it to 3. And so that didn't update right there. Let's see over here, a 0.4 for the density, the contour and perpendicular, it did adjust for that. So what I'm finding here is that there is a little bug with the system in a way, when it's applying these style sheets. Now it's not allowing everything to be saved right now like it should. You can see even for this run stitch, it has a basic tie-in and tie-off, and I removed that in the previous over here in the woven. And I've noticed that it doesn't want to do that right now. It doesn't want to hold that information like it should. But even like on this satin right here, it did hold like the density, it did hold the underlay, and it did hold the compensation. So you can see it did hold that information. But if I go to the commands, again, it didn't hold that none and none like it was supposed to. So let me show you something really quick. I'm going to turn this grid on. I'm going to do a little snap to grid here. I'm going to create this this satin stitch right here. The reason I'm doing snap to grid is because I want it to be perfect on this one. So I have this little satin stitch here, and let me go into the edit. I always like to take these back a little bit, the start and ends, so they're not right on the edge. But notice that when I select this, the line is all the way up to here and all the way down there, but notice that there's push compensation here. It doesn't go all the way to the edge because we told it we wanted, for the push, we wanted to drop it a line on both sides. And so what that does is it basically takes the top line like this that you see here and it deletes it. So it doesn't change the outline. The outline is still the same. It just drops one of the stitches on both ends. And if you do the measurement on that, if you're at a 0.4, you're going to be dropping a stitch there, and you're going to have about a 0.4 millimeter drop there, and it's worked pretty good for me. So I've been doing that, and you can see that it is adjusted for pull compensation right there as well. So the pull and the push is adjusted for. And then let me show you on this fill stitch. If I zoom in here, let me go ahead and change the angle of it so that we can look at the edges. So if I zoom in here, you'll notice that it drops a couple stitches there. So if I come in here and I measure, I'm at a 0.4. So by dropping it, that line, it's giving me the proper adjustment for push compensation. And the reason that I like to use it is it's very clean. It's much cleaner than doing it by millimeters. The pull compensation has always worked fine, but the push has always kind of been off a little bit, in my opinion, like where one edge will be backed up the right amount, but then maybe the other end isn't. And so I found by using by lines in push compensation, it just seems to work much better. So I do 2 lines for a fill, 1 line for a satin. And let's see if this one held. It did, which is good. So it should have backed it up and added pull at the same time. And let me go ahead and it's kind of hard. You can't really tell when it comes to the steel stitch because it's a center line here, but it did adjust for it. So that is how you can create your own style sheet. Now, it's not perfect right now. Some of the things aren't saving, but it still will save you time, and it'll help get your basic settings already there and applied, and like for underlay, stitch length, stuff like that. So I hope you like this lesson. Hopefully they'll get those little issues fixed soon, and make some of your own style sheets. It's not too difficult to do, and get it according to the settings you want. And again, like I said, this can be great for working with like 60 weight thread, because you definitely need to tighten the density up. So you want to find the density you like, stitch out a density chart, find the density you like, and apply that in here. And just when you go to name it, make sure you name it like 60 weight. Put a 60 WT in there so that you know when you go up to file new, you can find it easy and you know that it's set up for that weight of thread. So hope that you enjoyed this video, and hopefully you'll make some of your own style sheets.